There we go. So Tom gave a great acknowledgement before as well, but I just also like to, as a Museums Victoria representative, acknowledge the Wurrung, Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nations where we work, and also acknowledge the Gunai Kurnai, Monero and Bidawal people as traditional custodians of the lands on which this project will take place. So just a bit of an outline before we truly kick things off. So I'll begin with a bit of background of the Sounds of Recovery project, as well as an outline. Karen, my supervisor, will give a bit of background into the eco-acoustics side of things, and then we'll give a bit of an equipment overview looking at the Audio Moth and Songmeter microphones, as well as some more specific details on what we're looking to get out of this project, and then tips on things like site selection, habitat requirements, and then some of the other technology we use. And there should also be some time for questions at the end as well. So a bit about the project. So as you remember, back in 2019 and 2020, the Black Summer bushfires had huge devastating impacts on the East Gippsland landscape and the native wildlife and flora. In 2020, the Victorian National Parks Association, or VNPA, and East Gippsland Conservation Management Network documented these impacts through a series of wildlife surveys. This was a major first step, but these surveys were constrained by just the sheer geographic scale of the East Gippsland landscape. And so this project is looking to expand upon those surveys. Museums Victoria is a leader in eco-acoustic monitoring and data analysis. And so we're looking to team up with VNPA and East Gippsland Conservation Management Network and do a series of audio trials, audio eco-acoustic monitoring. So the actual project outline itself, the scope of this project is to enable communities to lead bushfire recovery wildlife monitoring using eco-acoustics. Eco-acoustics will be using microphones that are set up in various landscapes throughout East Gippsland to survey and monitor for vocal wildlife, including species of conservation interest throughout the region. And to do this, Museums Victoria, our role is to provide hands-on training as well as online training such as today to wildlife volunteers in East Gippsland on how to use these wildlife audio recorders to document different species and analysing that data. We'll be using acoustic species detection tools or call recognisers that can detect different targeted species as well as general species throughout the property or landscape. And we'll be doing this with, we'll be providing free training to community members to use these on their own going forwards into the future. And it's important to acknowledge that this project has been supported by a couple of different partners, the Foundation for Rural, Regional and Renewal, and the Wetton Hall Environment Trust. And before we go further, I'd also think it's important that Tom and Sarah from the VNPA introduce themselves. So Tom, do you want to go first?
Sure, thanks Liam. My name's Tom Crook. I'm the Programs Manager for the East Gippsland Conservation Management Network. We're a regional environmental charity who really works on a cooperative basis with anyone who's interested in conservation outcomes in East Gippsland. Mainly over the last 5 to 10 years, that's seen us working with the community environment sector, so land care groups, coast care groups, that sort of thing. But in more recent times, increasingly working with government land management agencies, East Gippsland Shire Council, DECA, Parks Victoria. So we run a range of conservation orientated projects across East Gippsland, and we have registered charity status, so we're able to solicit funds from places on a tax deductible basis, which keeps our volunteer base going. I'm their single employee, and I work at the moment 1 day a week. So we tend to run on love a lot of the time, and we're really interested in furthering those partnerships with the community and government land management agencies for conservation outcomes in East Gippsland.
Great, thanks, Tom. Sarah, would you like to go and introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Blair. I am from the Victoria National Parks Association, which is a quite old now NGO that's been working to get areas of nature protected and well managed since the early 50s. I am the Nature Watch coordinator, so I run our land-based citizen science program. And so basically take teams of volunteers out, train them on how to use a lot of the wildlife monitoring equipment. And we have been doing that for about 14 years. So we've done a lot of camera work for animals, but we also have been doing a lot of audio work across many different projects. And audio work is very challenging in terms of the analysis. So we have worked with Karen fabulously for many years to help us do the analysis for that. Most recently, we've been working in Gippsland with our Life After Fire project. So we've been doing that for about 3 years and done it on private land as well as public land in many different sites. And that is all being summarized and reported soon, which is quite exciting. But yeah, fantastic working with people, landowners, training up landowners to use this equipment, and then also with teams of volunteers on public land. And then still Karen and now Liam have been helping with the analysis. So I'm really looking forward to extending my knowledge and my ability to, I'm good at collecting data, but I don't know how to analyze the audio data. So this is going to be a fantastic project for that.
Awesome, thanks, Sarah. So yeah, just to reiterate, for this project, Museums Victoria has teamed up with VNPA and East Gippsland Conservation Management Network to undertake this project. So a bit of background on ecoacoustics. Karen, would you like to talk about your research and expertise in this field?
Sure, thanks, Liam. Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Rowe. I'm the curator of birds at Museums Victoria, and we've been working since about 2015 on developing ways to record wildlife soundscapes and analyze the biological data that is contained within them. And so ecoacoustics is really a broad term to capture the field of science that combines sort of the physics of sound production and transmission and how we actually extract the biological information from that. And so our work at the museum has focused really on targeting individual species. So we work with things like plains wanderers and Australasian bitterns. We've done lots of work with forest owls and other targeted taxa, particularly those of conservation interest. But we also look at how we summarize the sounds in the soundscape to get ideas about biodiversity as a whole. So there are ways we can generate these values of biodiversity activity in soundscape. So it's really a not so new anymore field of study, but I will say that the tools that have become more available to us research scientists who are not computer programmers, like AI and more extensive modeling approaches, allows more and more people to be able to use those tools to help them answer their own conservation questions. And so the timing of this project is really great because we're right at the cusp of being able to generate and use very simple interfaces for analyzing data in a very complex way.
Fantastic. Thanks, Karen. So it's pretty exciting what this project is setting out to do. And I guess to reiterate, it's going to be quite an important project for volunteers to be involved with as well in this new developing field. So going forwards, we'll look at some of the equipment that this project will be using and that you, if you're interested as volunteers, will be deploying throughout the landscape. So first off, we have the AudioMoth. This is a miniature credit card sized audio recorder, which is low cost. It's a crowd-funded, open sourced microphone that's been built collaboratively. It also ties in with a phone app, which we'll discuss a bit later. And it's an incredibly low energy audio recorder, so it can be set up for quite a long time. And due to its size, it's also very easy to carry around. The other microphone we'll be using, which is a bit newer, is the Songmeter Micro, developed by Wildlife Acoustics. Again, very lightweight, and also exceptionally waterproof, weatherproof. It has Bluetooth functionality and pairs with the previously mentioned mobile phone app, which you can also use to check the status of a recorder and change recording settings and schedule without actually being out on the field. It has an estimated battery life of between 120 to 210 hours, which really varies depending on what settings you have it set on. So using these microphones, we're looking for a few different things, or more specifically, what the community would like to look for. So when you're signing up for this project and setting out your microphones, there's a few different things to consider as to which species you actually want to target and identify, or if you would prefer setting up these microphones to just find out what is generally out on your property or throughout the landscape. There's a few things to consider with this, mostly the time required for data analysis once you've collected all your recordings and data. So with targeted species, if you're looking for a specific species, you're going to require generally less data. And this takes less time to analyze because you're looking for particular calls, whereas general species, you would generally have a lot more data, which requires a lot more time. So essentially, more species equals more time. Another thing to consider is tie-ins with other projects that are going on throughout the East Gippsland landscape at the moment. So I know East Gippsland Conservation Management Network has a couple of different projects, such as the Yellow-bellied Glider project and the iNaturalist project, which I believe is something like a competition where you find the more species you find, the higher score you get. So that's something to consider. There's also the ongoing VNPA Life After Fire project. And if you're interested in frogs, any data gathered regarding frog calls can be used to help expand the ANU Frog ID app. So when you're setting out your microphones, there's a few different things to consider as well. So if you do have a targeted species, think about what sort of habitat is preferred by the species. So for instance, if you're after sooty owls, they generally prefer gullies and damp woodlands, rainforests, south-facing areas. Whereas if you're looking for something more like a powerful owl, they could be in a lot more different open woodlands, even potentially in urban areas. Another thing to consider is what time does your species make vocalizations? For instance, nocturnal species such as yellow-bellied gliders will only be out at night. But if you are interested in more different species such as songbirds, a dawn, dusk chorus, a recording schedule is more preferential. Things like the time of year, if you're after a seasonal species or a migratory species, they may only be heard during the warmer months. And then if you're after a specific species such as Australasian bittern, they may only inhabit a particular vegetation structure, such as vegetated wetlands in the bittern's instance. So a few different things to consider. There's also more practical things like accessibility, like will it be on private or public land, and will other people be able to find the site in case you can't yourself. And there's also things like physical difficulty and the terrain. Generally, it's something easy to access will always be more preferential, including car access. The closer you can get a car to a site, the better. There's also things to consider like noise pollution. Microphones are very sensitive to noises such as cars and trucks, farming equipment, farming animals, aeroplanes overhead, which is often unavoidable. I did have a few sounds here of good audio and versus bad audio, but I don't think it's actually going to work right now due to my headset, unfortunately. But I can always send that through later on if you would like a few good examples. This is an example of a great setup. So no vegetation, close by the microphone that will rustle around and interrupt any good recordings. Something higher on a tree is always great, generally around eye height, head height. And less, like not many shrubs or other trees in the 1.5 meter vicinity around the microphone is also a really good thing to keep in mind. If you can, it's not always possible, but generally, if we can keep vegetation clear, the more the better. So going forwards, this won't be something volunteers have to consider right now, but after the data has all been collected, we use a program called Arbomon to go through the analysis and management. Now, I know this image might look a bit fiddly and tricky, but Arbomon is actually a rather intuitive program. And here at the museum, our role is to help you guys learn and use this program. It's great for uploading and analyzing large amounts of audio data. And one particularly great thing about Arbomon is that it's all for free. It allows you to visualize calls in what's called a spectrogram. As you can see in this image here, you can see what this call is visualized as, and then you can use that to identify a species by comparing it with other data. You can automatically detect other matching spectrograms through this large bulky data if you're looking for a quick way to find other similar calls and other similar species. It's great for organizing data through things such as playlists, so you can organize data by site, by time and day, and by a particular species or several species. And you can also use Arbomon's phone app, as I mentioned earlier, to track and manage all your set out audio recorders visualized on a map. And we'll have a separate workshop later in the project specifically dealing with Arbomon as well. So don't worry too much about it right now. So here's where you all come in. We can't get out there and do all the data collection ourselves. And so we're looking for keen volunteers to pick up some of the equipment that we've sent out, and then using their local knowledge and private property as well to deploy these audio recorders. And so the more volunteers, the better. That way we get greater coverage of the East Gippsland landscape. We also get your own intimate knowledge of the landscape, your time and access to properties. If you are interested in signing up for the Sounds of Recovery project, there are a few things you are committing to, mostly microphone deployment and servicing it, replacing batteries and such every few weeks. Data transfer and data analysis as well. What do you get out of it though? You get a greater connection to the country that you're on. You get to learn more about what species are out there and gain an in-depth connection, I suppose, to everything around you. And it's a great opportunity to build upon your own pre-existing flora and fauna knowledge, and also with Arbomon, a bit more technological expertise of this brand new technology that's only been coming out the last few years, and will be paving huge new leaps forward in the future for ecoacoustics. So that's a very special thing to be part of. If you are interested, we'll be sending out this expression of interest this afternoon. Just a few different details to put through, such as what community group you're part of, be it VMPA or East Gippsland, an East Gippsland Conservation Network Landcare group. If you're in a group and if you'd like to be the group lead, if you have a particular target species or if it's a general list. And lastly, we're also just very interested in what your expectations for this project are as well. And if you could complete that by November 17th, that gives you a couple of weeks to sort out the details and figure out exactly what you'd like to research. So thanks for listening. Are there any questions from the group? Yeah, Tom, go for it.
I'll just make the general statement that we're leaving it up to individuals who want to participate in this project to decide what their species of interest are, or where the locations are that you're particularly interested in using this ecoacoustic monitoring technology for. We're doing that for a couple of reasons, but mainly because one of the key outcomes we're looking for in this project is actually to build capacity in the community and in the non-profit environment sector, farming sector, you name it, across East Gippsland to use this technology, because we recognise that while it's still quite new, it's a very fast-paced moving space, and it is becoming increasingly powerful, and we feel like it has a lot of opportunity into the future. So we're really keen to see people use it, play with it, have a go of it, get to understand it, understand what it can and can't do, so we can continue to use it together into the future, possibly in a more coordinated fashion for specific species across landscape or specific environments and that kind of thing. So we're not providing that structure to the project at this stage, because we're just really keen for people to get the opportunity to get more familiar with the technology. And when we've got to that stage and we understand how to deploy it and how to analyse some of the information, then collectively as a team, we can start to look at what the opportunities are in a more coordinated, targeted type response.
Yeah, great. Thanks for reiterating that, Tom. I think, Andy, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Liam. Thanks, Tom. While I appreciate it's been designed for birds, and certainly the large forest owls would be top of my list for sure. The other sort of quite novel species for us at the moment, and the management thereof, are dingoes. Has there been any kind of work in incorporating some of the mammals into this project?
For mammals, not so much, because most aren't vocal creatures, but there's definitely room for it. I mean, dingoes could definitely be a potential research topic, given that they are quite vocal. Another species that stands out is yellow-bellied gliders as a very vocal mammal. Again, if anyone's interested in pursuing dingoes as a topic, that's absolutely fine.
Beauty. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I think it's fair to say that dingoes will be, they're in a similar basket to your large forest owls. We're looking at animals that only call intermittently. They do it opportunistically when it suits them, rather than some other bird species that might call every morning and every afternoon. The other thing with high order predators is they have large home ranges. So we found in our work with owls that while the passive acoustic monitoring was a really valuable tool, it was challenging for us to use it in a way that it stood by itself. We needed to complement the acoustic monitoring with other survey methods to get the level of information that we were really looking for. But we did find that it was quite a valuable addition to our existing project. But yeah, just the large home range and the intermittent calling presented a unique set of challenges for us.
Any other questions?
I can see Josh has got his hand up there.
Oh, great. Go for it, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. And Tom, I think you've answered part of the question. We've got a few Landcare members here from Snowy West, and I can see a couple more online there, and some members from Marlow. Just keen to get assistance in structuring a study and not just putting cameras sort of randomly where we kind of hope they might pick up something, just a bit more direction once we perhaps give you a few numbers of people that would be interested in joining.
Yeah, we can absolutely provide assistance in developing some structure for a project for you. Be very happy to help there. And as far as contacts, I think sending those through to Tom would be your best option.
Very good, thank you.
So yeah, thanks, Josh, and just to reiterate what Liam said, we've deliberately left the species of interest and the sites fairly open at this stage, because we want to try and cater for as many interests as we possibly can. And we're really keen to see people get their hands on and get familiar with this technology. But that is definitely with a view to working as a group in a more coordinated, consistent fashion around particular species or habitats of interest. So if you've got a collection of landowners or individuals who have a particular interest, whether that be frogs or rainforests or riparian habitats or something, the museum and both myself to an extent are here to help you structure that deployment and to make sure that you're able to target the things that are of interest to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I just thought it's worth mentioning that coming into next year, we'll be extending our iNaturalist program. I think that's what you were mentioning earlier. It'll be important for, I suppose, us to get hold of these sorts of cameras so we can keep adding to data. That'll work in really well.
Yeah, and we certainly see this as a really valuable add-on to existing project work. So I know that some other organisations I work with will be deploying or hope to deploy some of these as a part of their existing work rather than it just being a standalone project. So it's a really good opportunity to add further value and for it to be complementary to some other things that Landcare groups or others are already doing. Tama, I can see your hand up there.
Hi, thanks. I'm just wondering what sort of general amount of time it might take a week with, I don't know, monitoring a few species or something, just a general idea whether it's going to take 12 hours a week or more likely 5 hours a week.
Yeah, it won't be so much on a weekly basis, as well at the start anyway, while you're gathering data. I guess depending on the property and the scale of which you'll be setting out your microphones, that will impact it. Like driving and travel, for instance, to a site will be the biggest time sink, I think, at the beginning anyway. And then battery servicing, like replacing batteries, would again potentially only take a couple of hours every 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on how much you have to travel again. And then data analysis later on, that will vary on how much data you actually have, and how much, essentially it's how much you're willing to put in as well. I think, so Karen, from your previous projects, how many hours have other volunteers put in?
Actually, Sarah could probably do that one better, yeah.
Yeah,
I can just tell you a little bit. I've got some people already working with these units, and yeah, basically there's only a small amount of field work. So there's prep. So you got to get the batteries ready, you got to get the SD cards ready. You can sort of do that anytime it fits in your schedule. And then once you know kind of where you're going to go put it, going out and you just sort of tie it to a tree. They're quite an easy little unit to use. Everything is done on your phone to set it up. And so once you've done that once, it's very easy in future. You basically get it out there. You leave it for we leave it for 3 weeks because there's only 3 AA batteries. So you get about that much time, depending on how we have it set up, how much it will use. But that seems to be right. You go out, if you've got a new fresh set of batteries already charged and a second SD card, you can just swap it right there in the field and then bring the full one back and download it. There's a little bit of effort in, making sure you download the information and have the files named well so that it doesn't get confusing later, but really it's pretty simple. If you want to do set sites, you could just GPS them once and then just every 3 weeks zip out to them. It should be about 2 kilometers apart, just to not have powerful owls getting picked up on the same ones and things like that. But yeah, it can be quite quick. It's much easier than camera work, I tell you. We love the audio. It's just all in the analysis. That's when you're going to need to dig into Arbamon and get a really big cup of coffee and a comfy chair and just dig in. So the field work's not so bad, but then you get all the data.
Thank you.
Maria?
Yeah. Yep, just a quick one. I'm not sure if I missed it. How many recorders do you envisage each group being able to have? Is there a limit or?
There is only a certain amount. So between BNPA and East Gippsland Conservation Management Network, there's a couple of different numbers. Tom, how many? I think you have 30 audio moths. And how many song meters do you have again, sorry?
I'm not sure how many song meters we have in the total pool. I know that the museum funded a certain amount of song meters that went to VNPA and the CMN. Like you said, we've got about 30 audio moths. Some of those are out in the field. So depending on the level of interest, we've got 24 people on the call today. So we've definitely got enough for everybody to get at least one recorder. If that 24 people are in groups, then possibly a couple per group. It's not going to be here's a huge box of 20 recorders per group or anything like that. We're looking at a couple, maybe a few for each area or each group. We're really interested in getting a geographic spread too, if possible, and a bit of a spread on the animals and habitats of interest. So we'll basically just wait for the expressions of interest forms to come back to us, and then in a couple of weeks' time, sit down and work out how many people are interested in signing up and divide what equipment we've got amongst those people on the proviso that I can get out and grab some of the stuff that's currently in the field.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions? Great. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming along. I'll provide my email. If you have any more questions, feel free to give me an email or give me a call. Or you can also speak to Tom or Sarah if you know them as well. We'll be sending out that expression of interest this afternoon. I've also developed a few training manuals for the setup of the audio moths and the song meters. So if you're interested, we can send those out as well, and you can have a read through them even prior to receiving the microphones. But yeah, if you have any more questions, just let me know. Happy to help at any time.
And we will put this video recording of today's session for anybody who who wasn't able to make it, and the expression of interest form on our EGCMN website. And yeah, any further questions can be directed to Liam, Sarah, or myself. So we really look forward to guys signing up to this project. It really is at your discretion how much or how little work you put in it. There's nothing stopping you just getting a single recorder, putting it out a couple of times on a schedule of your choosing, say dawn and dusk. It will record all the sounds that occur for all those birds and anything else that's going on at the time. Will then help you analyze that information, and how many times you want to change cards and batteries, and how far you want to trek into the middle of nowhere to see what's happening out there in the acoustic world is really entirely up to you at this stage. But we look forward to receiving your expression of interests and working with you to get the best out of this that we can.
Thanks, guys. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, Josh. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I think that might be the end of the session if there's no other questions. So thanks for coming on behalf of Museums, VNPA, and Conservation Management Network. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Liam and Karen, is there anything else we need to cover off on before we sign off? I think we've set the date for the 17th for those expression of interest forms.